I don't really know where to begin, but I guess the best way is to just start with the night everything began. Back then, I was 23 years old, living in a small town in Pennsylvania where nothing much ever seemed to happen. I worked part-time at a grocery store, had a couple of close friends from high school who stuck around after graduation, and spent most of my evenings online. The internet was my escape. My real life felt slow, predictable, almost painfully boring sometimes. Online, though, I could talk to people from all over, join communities where I felt like I belonged, and for a few hours a night, pretend I wasn't stuck stacking cereal boxes and cleaning up spills in aisle 3. It was one of those nights when I stumbled onto a chat room I hadn't used before. This was before dating apps were everywhere, and chat rooms still had this weird mix of anonymity and adventure. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just conversation. But that was the night I saw her username, Haley_19. Her profile picture showed a girl with long, dark brown hair and a shy smile, sitting cross-legged in what looked like a college dorm. It wasn't a glamorous picture, but it had this authenticity that drew me in. She looked like the kind of girl you'd meet in real life, approachable, normal, not trying too hard. I don't know why, but something about her picture just felt safe. So I sent her a message. "Hey, I like your vibe. What are you up to tonight?" She responded within a couple of minutes. "Nothing much, just procrastinating. I should be studying for an exam tomorrow, but here I am." And just like that, a conversation started. At first, it was the usual small talk. "Where are you from? What do you do? How old are you?" She said she was 19, a college sophomore studying psychology in Ohio. She joked about how boring her classes were, how her roommate was driving her crazy, and how she had this bad habit of staying up way too late. We talked for hours that night, and then the next night, and the next. Soon it became routine. I'd get home from work, make myself a frozen pizza, log on, and wait for her. Sometimes she'd be the one waiting for me. We started sharing more personal stuff. Our favorite shows, the songs we couldn't stop listening to, the embarrassing stories from high school we'd never told anyone else. There was an ease to it. Talking to her felt different than talking to anyone else online. She wasn't just typing words on a screen. She had this way of making me feel like she was right there, sitting across from me. After about a week, she asked if I wanted to text instead of using the chat room. She gave me a number, and sure enough, when I sent a message, she responded right away. That made it feel even more real. Suddenly, she was a part of my actual day, not just my late-night chats. I get random texts while I was at work. Stuff like, "My roommate just left her dirty dishes in the sink again. I swear I'm gonna lose it." Or, "I just bombed my psych quiz. Send good vibes." It made me feel included in her world, like I mattered to her. And then came the pictures. She started sending me selfies. Nothing scandalous at first, just casual shots of her sitting in her dorm, or at a coffee shop, or making a silly face. I sent her some of me too. Felt good, this exchange of little pieces of our lives. I'd never been great at relationships. My high school girlfriend broke up with me the night before prom because she said I wasn't serious enough. After that, I kind of gave up on dating for a while. But with Haley, it felt easy. I didn't have to worry about impressing her. She seemed genuinely interested in me, in my boring grocery store job, in the dumb memes I sent her. Within a month, I was hooked. I'd rush home from work just to see if she had texted. If she didn't respond for a while, I'd get restless, almost anxious. She'd become part of my routine, but more than that, part of my happiness. One night, we were texting about relationships, and I admitted that I hadn't dated anyone seriously in years. She said she hadn't either, though she mentioned a messy breakup in high school. Then she wrote, "Honestly, I kinda like you." My heart did this weird flip when I read that. I didn't know what to say. I stared at my phone for a full minute before I replied, "I like you too." That was the moment everything shifted. From then on, we weren't just friends, we were something more. We started using pet names. She'd call me Babe, and I'd call her Hales. We stayed up late talking about what it would be like to finally meet, what we'd do on our first date, how we'd watch dumb horror movies and make fun of them together. But every time I suggested we video chat, she'd find an excuse. Bad Wi-Fi, a broken webcam, her roommate walking in. At first, I didn't push. I told myself not everyone was comfortable on video calls, but as weeks turned into months, it became harder to ignore. I brought it up one night. Don't take this the wrong way, but why don't you ever want to FaceTime or Skype? There was a long pause before she replied. I get nervous. I hate how I look on camera. I reassured her, told her I didn't care about that I just wanted to see her. She promised we would eventually, but not yet. And because I liked her, maybe even loved her, I let it go. Still, little things didn't add up. Once, she sent me a picture where her hair was longer than in the others, like it had grown 6 inches overnight. Another time, I noticed a reflection in her glasses that looked like it had been taken in a totally different room than she'd described. When I asked about it, she brushed it off with quick explanations. But I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. By the 3rd month, we were basically together. We hadn't put a label on it, but she'd tell me she missed me, that she wished I could be there, that she wanted me to be the first person she saw in the morning and the last at night. I started to imagine a future with her. Maybe I'd save up, drive to Ohio, surprise her. Maybe we'd spend a weekend together and everything would finally make sense. And then came the night she asked me for help. It was late, close to midnight, and she texted me, "Babe, I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out." I sat up in bed immediately. What happened? She told me her laptop had crashed, and all her coursework for the semester was on it. She said she needed to buy a new one ASAP or risk failing her classes. She hinted that she didn't have the money, that her parents weren't helping, and she didn't know who else to turn to. I didn't send her money, not right away. I told her I wished I could help, but that I didn't have much saved either. She didn't push, but I could feel the disappointment in her replies. That was the first time I really felt the tension between what I wanted to believe and what I was afraid might be true. Because here's the thing, I didn't want to believe Haley was lying to me, but the cracks in her story were getting harder to ignore. And deep down, I started to wonder if I was being played. After that night with the laptop story, I couldn't shake the uneasiness creeping in. She never outright asked me for money, but the implication was there. And for the first time since I'd met Haley, I hesitated. I started paying more attention to the details. When she texted me, I noticed her tone sometimes shifted, almost like it wasn't the same person writing. Some days she was bubbly, using tons of emojis. Other days she sounded flat, like she barely cared. I told myself maybe she was just having bad days, but the inconsistency stuck in my head. Then, about a week later, she disappeared. No texts, no late-night chats, nothing. I tried calling the number she'd given me, but it went straight to voicemail. For 3 days, I didn't hear a word. I was worried sick, thinking something had happened to her. And then, out of the blue, she texted, "Sorry, I had to go home for a family emergency. My grandpa's in the hospital." I didn't have time to explain. I wanted to be understanding. I told her I was there for her, but the truth was it didn't sit right with me. The timing was just too convenient. Right after the money conversation, suddenly she disappeared, then came back with an excuse I couldn't verify. That night, I Googled reverse image search. I'd heard about it before but never tried it. I took one of the selfies she'd sent me, saved it, and uploaded it. My heart was racing as the results popped up. And there she was, or rather, her picture. Not as Haley from Ohio, but on a Pinterest board titled "Cute College Girls." The same picture she sent me, except on a website full of stock-style images. My stomach dropped. I tried another one. Same result, this time on some random Tumblr blog. That's when I knew. I'd been catfished. My hands were shaking as I texted her. "Who are you really? Don't lie to me." I did a reverse image search. "Those pictures aren't yours." She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, all she wrote was, "I can explain." But she didn't. The next night, after blowing up her phone with calls she never answered, I finally got a long message. It started with, "My name isn't Haley. I'm sorry." She said her real name was Megan. She claimed she wasn't 19, but 27. She wasn't a college student in Ohio. She lived 2 states away, unemployed, and staying with a cousin. She admitted she used fake pictures because she was insecure about how she looked. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she wrote. At first, I just wanted to talk to someone. But then I started to really like you. I didn't want to lose you, so I kept lying. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. I didn't even know what to feel. Anger, betrayal, confusion, heartbreak. In one instant, every late-night laugh, every babe and "I miss you," all of it collapsed. But what messed me up most was that I still felt something. Even after knowing she wasn't who she claimed, I couldn't just shut it off. For months, she'd been a part of my everyday life. She'd been the person I turned to when I was lonely, when I needed someone to talk to. And now I didn't know if any of it was real. I asked her to prove she was who she said now. She sent me a blurry selfie, not the polished, smiling Haley, but a tired-looking woman with her hair in a messy bun. She looked older, worn down. She said, "This is me. I understand if you hate me now." I didn't reply right away. Over the next few days, she kept messaging me. She apologized over and over, begged me not to block her, said she really did like me and wanted a chance to start fresh. This time honestly. And here's where I need to admit something I'm not proud of. I didn't cut her off. Maybe I should have. Maybe that would have been the smart thing to do. But loneliness has a way of twisting your judgment. Even knowing the truth, I kept talking to her. I told myself I deserved some kind of closure, but really, I just couldn't let go. For about a month, we continued this strange half-relationship. She'd text me as herself, no fake pictures, no pretending. She tried to convince me she was serious, that she wanted to meet for real. But deep down, I never trusted her again. One night, my friend Tyler noticed how distracted I was at work and asked what was going on. I ended up telling him everything about Haley. The fake pictures, the confession. He just shook his head and said, "Dude, you're getting played. She's lying about something else. I guarantee it." I didn't want to believe him, but Tyler was persistent. He suggested we dig deeper. We took the number she'd been texting me from and ran it through a few online search tools. What came back shocked me. The number was tied to a man, not a woman. At first, I thought maybe it was an old number. Maybe she was just using someone else's phone plan. But the more I looked into it, the worse it got. The name that came up was a 40-year-old guy from a small town in West Virginia. Married. Kids. My stomach turned. I confronted her, if it was even really a her at this point. I sent a screenshot of the info I found and demanded the truth. This time she or he went silent. For 2 whole days, nothing. Then finally a message came through. "You weren't supposed to find out like that." I can't even describe how surreal it felt reading that. Everything I thought I knew about this person shattered all over again. Not a 19-year-old college girl. Not a 27-year-old insecure woman. A married man. All those late-night texts. All those "I like yous." All those fantasies of meeting up. None of it was what I thought. The anger hit me like a freight train. I told them never to contact me again. I blocked the number, deleted every picture, every message. But the truth is, it messed me up for a long time. For months afterward, I found myself second-guessing everyone I talked to online. Was I being lied to again? Were their pictures even real? I stopped trusting people so easily. And honestly, I stopped trusting myself too. How could I have been so blind? It wasn't just about being fooled. It was about how real it all felt. How much I'd let myself believe in someone who didn't exist. Even now, years later, I still think about it sometimes. The way I got hooked, the way I ignored the red flags, the way I wanted so badly for it to be real that I let myself fall for a fantasy. I wish I could say I learned my lesson completely, that I never let it happen again. But the truth is, loneliness makes you do stupid things. And sometimes, even when you know better, you still want to believe. If you're listening to this and you've ever doubted someone you met online, trust your gut. Don't ignore the little inconsistencies. Don't brush off the excuses. Because people can be anyone they want to be behind a screen, and sometimes they're nothing like what you hope. And if you're ever tempted to fake who you are, to use someone else's face, to make up a life that isn't yours, don't. You might think it's harmless at first, but eventually you're playing with someone's heart. And the damage you cause doesn't just disappear. I know, because I was the one left picking up the pieces. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. It really helps me keep sharing them. If you've ever wondered how easy it is to get caught in someone else's lies, let me tell you, sometimes it only takes one message. I wasn't looking for anything serious when it started. I'd just gotten out of a messy breakup, and I was lonely, scrolling through random profiles on Instagram late at night. That's when I got a follow request from a girl named Samantha. Her profile looked real enough. She had about 300 followers, a mix of pictures that seemed casual, selfies in the car, snapshots with friends, even a couple of gym shots. She didn't look like some influencer trying to sell something, which made me think she was just a normal girl. She sent me a DM not long after I accepted her request. "Hey, do we know each other? You look familiar." It was the oldest line in the book, but it hooked me anyway. I told her no, but that I appreciated the message. That kicked off the kind of back and forth that feels harmless at first. We talked about music, TV shows, stupid memes. It didn't feel flirty, just easy. But over the next few weeks, the conversations grew more personal. She started asking about my family, my job, my goals. Felt like she actually cared. And after the breakup I'd just been through, that meant more than I realized. The thing is, she was careful. She never volunteered too much about herself. She'd tell me little things like how she was studying nursing, how she lived with her older sister, how her parents were divorced. Just enough detail to sound believable, but never enough that I could really check. I didn't notice at first. I just filled in the blanks myself. Then came the video calls, or rather, the excuses for why we couldn't have them. The first time I suggested FaceTime, she said her phone was too old and the camera didn't work. Another time, she claimed her Wi-Fi was terrible at her apartment. Then she said she was self-conscious, that she didn't look good without makeup. I wanted to respect her boundaries, so I let it slide. But the pattern was there. She sent me pictures, though. At least I thought they were pictures of her. They looked consistent, same girl, same smile, same long brown hair. She'd send them at random times, like when she said she was studying at the library or eating lunch. That made it feel more real, like she was just checking in. Looking back, I should have questioned why the pictures were always so perfectly lit, so polished. Why they never looked like true spur-of-the-moment selfies. But at the time, I didn't want to see the cracks. Things escalated when she started sharing deeper stuff. One night, she told me about her ex-boyfriend. She said he cheated on her with her best friend and that she had trust issues because of it. She said talking to me felt safe, that I was different. I can't lie, that hit me hard. It made me want to prove I wasn't like the guy who hurt her. And maybe that's when she knew she had me. We started texting every day. Good morning messages, good night messages. She'd get jealous if I didn't reply fast enough. And instead of seeing it as a red flag, I saw it as proof she cared. Then came the first real ask. She said her sister's car had broken down and that she was helping cover the repairs, but it wiped out her savings. She hinted that she was stressed about bills, that she might have to drop a class if she couldn't make rent. She didn't ask outright for money, but she painted the picture, and I stepped right into it. I offered to help, even if it was just a little. She hesitated, then gave me her Cash App. I sent her $200. She called me amazing after that. Said no one had ever been so kind to her. That was the start of it. Over the next month, the requests got bolder. Not every day, but often enough that it became a pattern. Textbooks, groceries, phone bill, unexpected expenses. Always just small amounts, $50 here, $100 there. Enough that it didn't feel like I was being used, but together it started adding up. At this point, my best friend Jake started noticing how distracted I was. We used to hang out all the time, but now I was glued to my phone, waiting for Samantha's messages. One night, he flat out asked, "Are you sure this girl's real?" I got defensive. Of course she was real. I'd seen her pictures. I'd heard her voice on audio notes. She sent me videos too, though now that I think back, they were always short, 10-second clips that could have easily been lifted from anywhere. Jake wasn't convinced. He told me about catfishing, about how people could build whole fake identities online. I brushed him off. I wanted so badly to believe Samantha was who she said she was. But cracks started showing. One night, she claimed she was sick and sent me a picture of herself in bed. But something about the photo felt off. The blanket behind her looked like a stock photo I'd seen before. I brushed it off, but it stuck with me. Another time, she mentioned her sister, but she gave a different name than she had before. When I pointed it out, she laughed it off and said I must have misremembered. I wanted to believe her, but deep down I knew Jake was right. Something didn't add up. The tipping point came when she told me she wanted to meet in person. She said she'd been thinking about it for weeks and that she was finally ready. My heart jumped at the thought, but then came the catch. She said she needed money for the bus ticket. Just $120. She promised she'd pay me back. That's when everything came crashing down. Because the way she asked, it wasn't hesitant or embarrassed like before. It was casual, almost routine, like she'd done this before. I agreed anyway because by then I was too deep. I sent the money and waited for her to tell me when she was coming. But the day of the supposed trip, she texted me that her grandma had a stroke and she couldn't leave town. I wanted to scream. I didn't call her a liar right then, but I knew. I knew in my gut. And yet I still didn't walk away. Because when you're that invested, when you've given someone not just your money but your trust, it's hard to admit you've been played. So I kept talking to her, even as doubt gnawed at me. And what happened next? That's the part that made me realize just how far this whole thing really went. After the whole grandma had a stroke excuse, I was done pretending things made sense. Deep down, I knew I'd been played, but I wasn't ready to accept it fully. So I decided to test her. I told her I wanted to come visit her instead. I figured if she was serious about us, she'd be happy. But her reaction was anything but happy. She panicked. She said her apartment was too messy for visitors. Then she said her sister wouldn't be comfortable with a stranger staying over. Then she said she didn't feel ready yet, even though she was the one who had first suggested meeting up. That's when the wall finally cracked. I decided to dig. I took one of her selfies and ran it through Google's reverse image search. My heart sank when the results popped up. Her face, Samantha's face, was everywhere, but not tied to a nursing student from Chicago. No, the pictures belonged to a girl named Kayla, a fitness influencer from Texas. Thousands of followers, tons of photos, all identical to the ones Samantha had sent me. My stomach turned. I scrolled through Kayla's Instagram, recognizing picture after picture. The studying at the library shot, the laying in bed sick photo, even the one she'd sent me claiming her sister had just cooked her dinner. All stolen. I felt sick. I confronted her immediately. "Who are you really?" I texted. "Your pictures belong to someone else. I know you're lying." First silence. Then a single message. "Please don't hate me. I can explain." I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I waited. After an hour, another message came in. "My real name is Michelle. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to hurt you." She claimed she was 29, not 21. She said she worked at a call center, not studying nursing. She said she'd been insecure about how she looked, that she'd used Kayla's photos because she thought I wouldn't like her otherwise. "I just wanted someone to talk to," she wrote. "Then I met you, and I didn't know how to stop. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Part of me wanted to block her immediately, but another part, the broken, stupid part, still wanted answers. So I asked her to prove she was real. She sent me a blurry picture of herself holding a piece of paper with my name written on it. It wasn't Kayla. It wasn't the girl I thought I was falling for. It was someone completely different. She didn't look bad, just ordinary. But ordinary didn't matter. Ordinary would have been fine if she'd been honest from the start. What wasn't fine was months of lies, thousands of dollars, and a relationship built on smoke. I called her out. "You lied about everything. About your name, your job, your family. You used someone else's life and tricked me. You've been using me for money this whole time." She swore it wasn't like that. She said she really did like me, that the money was just desperation because she was struggling. She begged me not to cut her off, but I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I was done, that she was a liar, and I didn't want to hear from her again. I blocked her number, unfollowed every account she had, and deleted all the pictures she'd sent me. I thought that would be the end of it, but then it got darker. A week later, I started getting messages from new numbers. different area codes, but the same style of writing. She kept finding ways to reach me, begging me to forgive her, claiming she was in love with me. When I ignored her, the messages turned bitter. You'll never find someone who cares like I did. You think girls are lining up for you? You'll regret this. It was like she flipped a switch, one moment desperate, the next cruel. That's when I realized it hadn't just been a mistake. It was a pattern. She wasn't some insecure girl who slipped up. She was a catfish who knew exactly what she was doing. Jake, my best friend, was the one who convinced me to stop engaging completely. He said people like her thrive on the attention. As long as I kept reading, kept replying, she'd keep coming back. So I changed my number, deleted my old social accounts, started fresh. It sucked. It felt like I was erasing a part of my life, even if that part was fake. But I'll tell you this. Once I cut her off completely, I started to see things clearly. I wasn't in love with her. I was in love with the idea of her, the girl she pretended to be, the version of her that never existed. I fell for a fantasy, not a person. And that's the dangerous thing about catfishing. It's not just about lies. It's about how those lies make you feel. They make you feel wanted, cared for, seen. And once you've felt that, it's hard to let it go, even if it's all built on deception. Took me a long time to move on. I felt embarrassed, humiliated even. I didn't tell most people because I didn't want to admit I'd been that gullible. But the truth is, it can happen to anyone. If you're listening to this, take my advice. If someone online always has an excuse not to meet, not to video call, not to show proof, don't ignore it. If they start asking for money, even small amounts, walk away. Because once you're in deep, it's harder to get out. And sometimes the scars last a lot longer than you think. Subscribe for more stories. It keeps me motivated to keep sharing these real experiences. I never thought the smallest accident could change the course of my life. But that's exactly what happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon in New York. I was 26 at the time, working a job I didn't love, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in Queens, and spending most of my evenings scrolling mindlessly through Netflix, trying to convince myself that this was just a phase. My friends were getting married, buying houses, traveling to Europe together, and I was stuck in this endless routine of work, eat, sleep, repeat. That Thursday, I left the office late because my boss insisted on rechecking every detail of a report. By the time I got out, the rain was pouring so hard it looked like someone had split the sky open. I didn't have an umbrella, just a cheap jacket that wasn't remotely waterproof. I bolted toward the subway entrance, head down, and that's when it happened. I slipped on the slick concrete steps. My phone flew out of my pocket, and before I even registered what was happening, I collided with someone walking up the stairs. We both went down. "Jesus, are you okay?" a man's voice said, full of concern. My knees were throbbing, and my hair was plastered to my forehead from the rain. I looked up, ready to apologize, but the words froze in my throat. The guy kneeling beside me was, well, to put it bluntly, he looked like someone straight out of a movie. Tall, broad shoulders beneath a soaked navy coat, dark hair that curled slightly when wet, and these piercing hazel eyes that seemed way too kind for a stranger who'd just been body-checked on the subway stairs. I'm fine," I stammered, scrambling to pick up my phone. The screen was cracked straight through the middle. Great. He picked it up before I could, handing it to me carefully. "It might still work. Sorry, that was probably my fault. I wasn't paying attention." I blinked at him. No, it was definitely mine. I was basically sprinting down the stairs like an idiot. He smiled, and not one of those quick, polite smiles, but the kind that lingers, genuine, like he found the whole situation funny in a charming way rather than annoying. "You know," he said, "usually when people knock me over, they don't apologize this much. You must be one of the good ones." I felt my cheeks burn. Or just really clumsy. We both laughed, the sound oddly warm against the backdrop of the storm. Then the loudspeaker announced the next train's arrival, and the moment teetered on that fragile edge of ending. "Well, I guess this is me," I said, motioning toward the platform. "Right?" he said, pausing like he wanted to say something else but wasn't sure if he should. "Hey, wait," He pulled a pen from his coat pocket, grabbed my cracked phone, and scribbled something across the back of my old case. A phone number, in case you ever want to grab coffee. Or, if you need someone to pay for half a new phone. I laughed again, stunned but weirdly thrilled. You're offering to buy me a coffee and a new phone? Just the coffee, he said with a grin. The phone's negotiable. The train doors opened, and I stepped inside, holding my phone like it was suddenly worth more than before. He stayed on the platform, raising a hand in a half-wave before disappearing into the crowd. That night, I couldn't stop staring at the numbers inked across the back of my case. I told myself I wouldn't text him. I'd had enough disappointing dates from apps, blind setups, and random bar encounters to last a lifetime. This guy was a stranger, a ridiculously handsome stranger. Yes, but still, what did I know about him? For all I knew, he could be married or a scammer or worse. But the way he smiled kept replaying in my head. And the way he helped me up like I wasn't an inconvenience, but someone worth noticing. By midnight, after pacing my apartment for an hour, I caved. Hey, this is the clumsy girl from the subway. I hit send, then immediately regretted it, burying my face in a pillow. He wasn't going to reply. Of course he wasn't. Except he did. Less than a minute later. Unknown number. Clumsy girl. I was hoping you'd text. I'm Noah, by the way. Noah. The name fit him. That was the beginning of what I didn't realize would become one of the most intense chapters of my life. We texted until 2 a.m. that night. Nothing deep, just easy, flowing conversation that felt like slipping into a warm bath. He was funny, self-deprecating, and had this way of asking questions that made me want to answer honestly instead of giving the polished, safe version of myself I usually offered on first encounters. The next day, he asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. I should have said no. I had work. I had errands. I had 1,000 reasons not to risk another letdown. But something in me whispered yes. We met at a little cafe near Union Square. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees waiting. I didn't know what you liked, he said when I sat down. So I got a cappuccino and a latte. One of them has to be close. That small gesture nearly unraveled me. Nobody had ever thought about the little things like that before. The conversation was just as effortless in person. We talked about everything from childhood stories to bad job experiences to our favorite books. Hours slipped by without me noticing. At one point, it started raining again outside, and instead of groaning about the weather, he leaned closer and said, I'm kind of glad it rained so much. If it hadn't, we probably wouldn't have met. Something in my chest tightened. From that day forward, we started seeing each other almost every evening. Dinners that lasted until closing, walks through Central Park where we'd get lost on purpose, late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn. It was like the world had gone from black and white to full Technicolor overnight. And yet, as wonderful as it felt, there was a shadow I couldn't quite ignore. Every time Noah asked about my past relationships, I kept my answers vague. I didn't tell him about the ex who cheated on me, leaving me with trust issues so heavy they still hung over me like chains. I didn't tell him how afraid I was that this, too, was temporary, just another pretty story that would end with me crying into my pillow. I convinced myself it was better not to bring it up. Not yet. But deep down, I worried that keeping parts of myself hidden might come back to haunt me. Little did I know, Noah was hiding something too. The weeks with Noah blurred into something that felt almost unreal. For the first time in years, I woke up looking forward to the day ahead. He'd send me a good morning text before I even got out of bed, and sometimes he'd show up outside my office building during my lunch break, grinning like he had a secret, holding 2 sandwiches wrapped in brown paper. It wasn't just the grand gestures that got to me. It was the little things. The way he always held the subway pole so I wouldn't have to. The way he noticed when I was anxious and would squeeze my hand once, grounding me without saying anything. The way he laughed with his whole chest, like joy wasn't something to be contained. But as the honeymoon phase deepened, so did the questions. One evening, after we'd finished dinner at a cozy Italian place, I leaned back in my chair and asked, "So, you've told me about your college days, your favorite bands, the time you tried surfing and nearly drowned. But you never really talk about your family. His smile faltered just slightly. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I did. He took a sip of his wine, buying time. They live upstate, he said finally. We're not that close. Oh, I said, treading carefully. Complicated. You could say that. He glanced at me, then changed the subject. He nagged at me, but I didn't push. Everyone had their baggage. God knows I had mine. A few days later, he invited me to his apartment. It was a small one-bedroom near Brooklyn Heights, sparsely decorated but surprisingly neat. The only personal touches were stacks of books on the shelves and a framed photograph of a dog sitting on the windowsill. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing to the picture. "That's Max," he said softly. "He was mine. Passed away a couple of years ago." There was something in his tone that made me want to hug him. Instead, I reached out and brushed his hand. "I'm sorry." "He looks like he was loved." "He was," Noah said. Then he looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read, like he wanted to say more but was holding back. That night, for the first time, we kissed. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't clumsy. It was careful, reverent, like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth. And when I went home, I couldn't stop replaying it over and over, but the cracks started showing soon after. One Friday evening, I called him to see if he wanted to grab dinner. He didn't pick up. I texted. No response. Hours passed, and I tried not to spiral, telling myself he was probably busy, or asleep, or had his phone on silent. The next day, he finally texted back. "Sorry, long night. Work stuff. Talk later?" Should have been fine. But something about the vagueness unsettled me. He never talked much about his job, just said he worked in consulting, which in New York could mean literally anything. "Are you avoiding me?" I typed, then deleted. "Is everything okay?" I typed, then deleted that too. Finally, I just wrote, "Missed you yesterday." His reply was instant. "Missed you too." I wanted to believe him. I did, but I couldn't shake the unease that he was hiding something bigger. Weeks went by and we fell back into our rhythm. More dinners, more long walks, more nights tangled in each other's arms. But every now and then, he'd vanish for a day or two. No calls, no texts, just silence. And when he came back, he'd act like nothing happened. One night, I finally confronted him. We were sitting on his couch, a half-empty bottle of wine between us. "Noah," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Sometimes you disappear. You don't answer calls, you don't text back for hours. And when you do, it's always vague. What's going on?" He froze, staring at the glass in his hand. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, setting the glass down. "You deserve honesty," he said. My chest tightened. "Okay." "I wasn't lying about work," he began. "I do work in consulting, but not the kind you're thinking. My job, it's messy, confidential. Sometimes I get pulled into projects that mean I can't talk about where I am or what I'm doing. It's not about you. It's never about you." "That's a vague," I said, frustrated. He gave a small, almost pained smile. "I know, and I hate it. But if you trust me, I promise. I'm not disappearing because I don't care. Quite the opposite." I wanted to scream at him for being cryptic, but instead, I just whispered, "I don't want to lose you." "You won't," he said, cupping my face in his hands. "Not unless you decide you want to." His words soothed me, but they didn't erase the doubts. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, maybe past midnight, and I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Do you know who your boyfriend really is?" I sat up in bed, heart pounding. "Who is this?" I typed back. No reply. The next day, I showed Noah the message. He paled, his jaw tightening. "Delete it," he said sharply. "Don't reply. People play games." "But, please," he interrupted, softer this time. "Trust me on this." I nodded, but unease gnawed at me. Who would send something like that? And why? The tension between us grew. I started noticing things I'd brushed off before. The way Noah would get sudden calls and step out of the room to take them. The way he never let me near his laptop. The the way he always paid in cash when we went out. Finally, one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. "Noah, I need the truth," I said, my voice trembling. "All of it. Because right now, I feel like I don't even know who you are." He looked at me for a long time, then closed his eyes. "If I tell you, there's no going back." My heart thudded in my chest. "Tell me," he exhaled slowly. "I wasn't lying about consulting, but what I consult on, it's not business. It's security, high-stakes cases, sometimes dangerous ones. That's why I vanish. That's why I can't tell you everything." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you what? Some kind of fixer? Or FBI?" He gave a humorless laugh. "Nothing so glamorous. Just someone people hire when things get complicated. Too complicated for the usual routes." The words felt heavy in the air. "Why didn't you just say that?" I asked, voice breaking. "Because the moment I did, I'd risk dragging you into it. And the last thing I want is to hurt you." Tears burned my eyes. "You should have trusted me enough to decide that for myself." Silence stretched between us. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I love you," he said quietly. I froze. He had never said it before. My heart wanted to leap, but my head screamed caution. I whispered back, "Then prove it. Be honest with me. Completely." His eyes searched mine, and for the first time I saw fear there. Real fear. "I will," he said. "But if I do, you'll never look at me the same way again." If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe. It honestly keeps me motivated to share more moments like these with you. When I first met Julia, it was in the most ordinary of places, the produce aisle of a neighborhood grocery store. I was standing there staring at the avocados like they held the answer to all of life's problems. I couldn't tell which ones were ripe, and I was too proud to Google it. She stepped up beside me, reached past, and picked one up without hesitation. "You want them to be a little soft, but not mushy," she said, giving me this quick, confident smile. "Like this one." I laughed, embarrassed. "You just saved me from guacamole disaster." She shrugged. "Happy to help. I practically live here, so I've had practice." That was Julia, effortlessly warm, the kind of person who could make an interaction over fruit feel like fate had stepped in. We talked for a few minutes, and before I knew it, I was blurting out, "Do you want to maybe grab coffee sometime?" Her smile widened. "Yeah, I'd like that." It was so simple, so natural, that I couldn't believe it actually happened. I left the store grinning like a fool, clutching my avocado like it was a lucky charm. Our first date was at a small cafe with mismatched chairs and jazz playing softly in the background. We talked for hours about everything: music, books, the weird quirks of our families, how we both hated small talk but somehow never ran out of things to say that night. By the time we left, I felt like I'd known her for years. We started seeing each other more often. Dinner here, a movie there, long walks through the park where the conversation never slowed. With Julia, nothing felt forced. She was funny, thoughtful, a little sarcastic, and completely real. She didn't put on a front. She'd tease me for overanalyzing movie plots, and I'd laugh at the way she always managed to trip over the same uneven sidewalk crack. It wasn't grand gestures that pulled me in. It was the ease of it all. She felt like home in a way I didn't realize I'd been missing. One evening, maybe 3 weeks in, she invited me over to her apartment. It was cozy, filled with plants, soft blankets, and the faint scent of vanilla. She cooked pasta while we played old records, and I realized halfway through the meal that I was staring at her more than my plate. When she caught me, she smirked. "What? Nothing," I said quickly, embarrassed. "You were definitely staring. Can I help it if you look better than spaghetti?" She burst out laughing, and it was one of those laughs that makes you want to hear it again and again. Later that night, as we sat on her couch, our hands brushed. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. A quiet electricity filled the room, and then, without really thinking, I leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were testing uncharted waters. But it deepened, and when we finally pulled apart, she whispered, "Took you long enough. That was the start of something bigger." We fell into each other's lives fast. Too fast, maybe. I'd always heard people warn against moving quickly, but it didn't feel reckless. It felt inevitable. She'd show up at my place with takeout on a random Tuesday, or I'd swing by hers after work just to crash on her couch. And then there were the little rituals. Saturday mornings became our market days. She'd drag me out of bed, no matter how much I complained, and we'd wander through stalls of fresh bread, flowers, and produce, her hand always tucked in mine. It was perfect, almost too perfect. One night, while we were lying in bed, she suddenly asked, "Do you ever think about the future?" Her voice was quiet, serious. "Yeah," I said, turning to look at her. "All the time. What does it look like for you?" I hesitated. "Honestly, lately it looks a lot like this together." Her eyes softened, and she pressed her forehead against mine. "Me too." That should have been reassuring. And in the moment, it was. But later, when she'd fallen asleep beside me, her words replayed in my head. The way she'd said it, like there was more she wasn't saying. The first crack appeared a few weeks later. We'd made plans for dinner on a Friday night. I showed up at the restaurant, but she never did. I waited 30 minutes, then an hour, texting and calling, but got no response. Finally, around 11 p.m., she texted, "Sorry, something came up. Talk tomorrow?" When I asked her the next day what happened, she brushed it off. "Work emergency. On a Friday night?" Pressed. "It happens." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to believe her. I really did, but something about it felt off. After that, little things started adding up. She'd sometimes dodge questions about where she'd been, or she'd avoid answering calls when I was around. Once, I noticed a message flash across her phone screen. "Can't talk right now." She turned the phone face down immediately. I told myself I was being paranoid. Everyone had their own lives, their own stressors, but still doubt crept in. Then one night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, intending to ignore it, but the preview caught my eye. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach dropped. When she came back into the room, towel wrapped around her hair, I couldn't even look at her. "Hey," she said, smiling. "What's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "Who's texting you?" Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "That message. The one that just came in." Her face went pale. For a second, I thought she'd deny it. But instead, she just closed her eyes. And in that silence, everything between us shifted. The silence between us was unbearable. Julia stood frozen, water dripping down her shoulders, eyes shut like maybe if she stayed that way long enough the world would just reset. But it didn't. I was still sitting there, her phone still on the nightstand, and that message still burned into my head. "Julia," I said finally, my voice cracking. "Who sent that?" She opened her eyes slowly. "You shouldn't have looked. That's not an answer." Her towel slipped slightly as she wrapped it tighter, buying herself a moment. She sat down on the edge of the bed, but not too close. She stared at the floor. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "Then what is it?" Because it looked pretty damn clear to me. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's complicated. That's the word everyone uses when they're lying." I shot back, harsher than I intended. Her head snapped up, her eyes wet. "I'm not lying to you." "Then explain it." For a long moment, she didn't, and I thought that was it, that she'd just let the silence swallow us whole. But finally, she whispered, "It's my ex." I blinked. "Your ex?" He doesn't take no for an answer. I broke things off months before I met you, but he keeps reaching out. I try to shut him down, but he won't stop. That message, he sends crap like that all the time. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to grab onto her words and cling to them like a lifeline. But doubt still gnawed at me. "Then why didn't you tell me about him?" I asked. "Because I didn't want to drag you into it," she said, voice trembling. "I thought if I ignored him long enough, he'd get bored and move on. I didn't want you to think I was messy." Messy. That word hung heavy in the air. Relationships were messy. Life was messy, and maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe this was exactly what she said it was. An unwanted ex who wouldn't leave her alone. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it wouldn't stop growing. "Can I see the messages?" I asked finally. Her jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because if what you're saying is true, then there should be a pattern, right? Him chasing, you shutting him down. Just show me." She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I felt my heart sink. "Julia." She grabbed her phone, unlocked it, and shoved it into my hands. "Here, go ahead." I scrolled. The messages were there. Him reaching out, her replies curt or non-existent. But then I found one, just one, that shattered me. "I miss you too." It was from her. My chest tightened. "You said you were shutting him down." She looked panicked. "I was. That one time I slipped. He caught me on a bad day. I was feeling lonely, and I said something I shouldn't have. But it meant nothing. I swear." "Julia." My voice cracked. "That doesn't sound like nothing." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, please don't walk away over one mistake. I chose you. I want you, not him." I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, my thoughts a whirlwind. Could I forgive her? Was one slip-up enough to throw away everything we'd built? Or was this the first crack in something that was already broken? I didn't sleep that night. She curled up beside me, clinging like I was already halfway out the door, and I stared at the ceiling until morning. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. We still laughed, still kissed, still held hands at the market. But there was a shadow now, a distance that hadn't been there before. Sometimes she'd catch me looking at her, and I knew she could see the question in my eyes. "Can I still trust you?" Then came the night that forced me to decide. I was leaving work late, exhausted, when I saw her across the street. She didn't see me. Her back was turned, her hand brushing against the arm of a man standing too close. My chest clenched. It wasn't her ex. It wasn't anyone I recognized. I froze on the sidewalk, watching them laugh together. Her smile the same one she'd given me in the produce aisle that first day. My throat burned. I should have confronted her right there, but I didn't. I turned and walked the other way, my heart breaking with each step. That night, when she called, I ignored it. When she texted, I left it unread. The next day, she showed up at my apartment, her face pale and scared. "Why are you avoiding me?" she asked. I stared at her, anger and sadness tangled inside me. "I saw you. With him." Her eyes widened. "No, it's not what you think. He's a coworker. We were grabbing a drink after work." "Then why were you touching him like that?" "I wasn't," she said, tears welling. "You don't know what you saw, but I did." That was the moment I realized love wasn't always enough. Trust was the foundation, and ours had cracked too many times. "Julia," I whispered, my voice breaking, "I can't do this anymore." Her face crumpled. She reached for me, but I stepped back. "No," she pleaded. "Please, we can fix this." I shook my head. "Not this time." And with that, it was over. Walking away felt like tearing out a piece of myself, but staying would have destroyed me. For weeks, I felt hollow, but slowly the pain dulled. And one morning, I woke up and realized I could breathe again. Julia had been a chapter, a beautiful, heartbreaking chapter, but she wasn't the whole story. And I knew, when the time was right, I'd find someone who wouldn't make me question if love was real. If you want more stories like this, subscribing really helps me keep bringing them to you. You ever feel like you're living in someone else's shadow, even in your own family? That's been my whole life. My brother Daniel was the golden child. Straight A's, college scholarship, captain of the basketball team, and the one who never seemed to get in trouble. Meanwhile, let's just say I was the one who forgot chores, scraped by in school, and got caught sneaking out more than once. And because of that, Mom and Dad treated us like we were living in two different households. Daniel got freedom, support, and unconditional praise. I got lectures, curfews, and comparisons that cut deeper than they realized. But the real story, the one that blew everything up, started last Thanksgiving. The house smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon pies, and that buttery stuffing Mom always bragged about. Relatives filled the living room, football blared from the TV, and everything seemed fine. But I knew it wasn't. Not with Daniel sitting across the table, smiling like he hadn't just burned a hole through the family with the secret he was keeping. See, Daniel wasn't perfect. Not even close. He'd been hiding something huge. And for once in my life, I knew something he didn't want anyone else to know. I hadn't planned on saying anything. Honestly, I thought I'd keep my mouth shut forever. Let him keep his golden boy crown. But that night, something inside me snapped. It started when Dad raised his glass of wine and said, "To Daniel, our pride and joy, the first in the family to finish law school." Everyone clapped. Mom beamed. Even my cousins who barely knew him clinked glasses. And me? I sat there, heat crawling up my neck, my stomach twisting with rage. Because 2 nights before, I'd seen Daniel in town. Not at a law firm, not with friends, not doing anything worth celebrating. He was at the bar, drunk, with a woman who definitely wasn't his fiancée. He wasn't studying late at the library like he claimed. He wasn't being the perfect son. He was lying to everyone, including the woman he was supposed to marry in 3 months. I wanted to scream it then and there, to finally knock him off that pedestal and show everyone that maybe I wasn't the screw-up after all. But I didn't. Instead, I raised my glass and swallowed the bitterness with a sip of cranberry juice. But the tension didn't leave me. Not when Daniel smirked across the table like he owned the world. Not when Mom piled extra food on his plate and said, "See, this is why Daniel's going places." And definitely not when Dad turned to me and said, "You could learn a thing or two from your brother." That's when the words came out. Or maybe, I said, my voice louder than I meant, "You should stop pretending Daniel's perfect when he's not." The room went silent. Forks clinked against plates. My mom's face dropped, and Daniel's smile faded into something sharper. "What the hell are you talking about?" he asked, his voice low. I looked him dead in the eye. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." Whispers rippled across the table. My aunt glanced at my uncle. My cousins leaned in. Mom frowned. "Don't ruin dinner with one of your stunts." "It's not a stunt," I snapped. "It's the truth. Daniel isn't who you all think he is." Daniel slammed his fork down, his jaw tight. "Don't." But it was too late. The secret was out there, hanging over us like smoke. And in that moment, I realized there was no going back. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted it. But at the same time, I didn't. For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't untouchable. Everyone's eyes weren't on him with admiration anymore. They were on me, full of confusion, suspicion, and, in Mom's case, pure fury. Daniel leaned forward, his jaw tight, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Shut up." But I didn't. "Why don't you tell them where you were Tuesday night?" "Huh?" I said louder, forcing my words across the table. "Tell them about the woman at the Rusty Nail." The room froze. Aunt Carol, who never missed a chance for drama, let out a small gasp. Uncle Mike cleared his throat but didn't say anything. My cousin Leah's eyes darted back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. Daniel's fiancée, Megan, sat 2 seats down. She had been laughing just moments earlier, but now her face drained of color. "What?" she whispered, her voice shaky. "What is he talking about, Daniel?" Daniel's fists clenched against the table. "He's lying. He's jealous and bitter and—" "I saw you," I snapped, my voice shaking with adrenaline. "Don't act like I'm making this up. You weren't at the library. You weren't at school. You were at the bar, drunk, with some brunette hanging all over you." Megan turned toward him, her eyes searching his face for something. Denial, explanation, anything. But the longer he sat there, silent, the clearer the truth became. "No," she whispered again, shaking her head. "Tell me he's lying." Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. Mom finally snapped. "Enough. This is Thanksgiving. We don't air dirty laundry at the dinner table." But it was too late. The laundry wasn't just aired. It was scattered all over the table like broken glass. Megan shoved her chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. "I can't believe this," she said, tears filling her eyes. She grabbed her purse and bolted for the door. Daniel pushed up from the table, chasing after her, but Dad stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Sit down," he ordered, his voice shaking with anger I'd never heard before. "Dad, sit down." For once, Daniel obeyed. The room was tense, silent except for the faint sound of Megan's car starting outside. My chest was tight, my pulse pounding in my ears. I should have felt vindicated. I'd finally exposed him, but instead all I felt was sick. Mom broke the silence. "Why would you do this?" she hissed at me. "Why would you ruin Thanksgiving like this?" I laughed bitterly. "Why? Because you've spent my whole life worshiping him like he's some saint when he's not. He's been lying to all of us, and you just refuse to see it." Dad's face was unreadable, his eyes locked on Daniel. "Is it true?" Daniel stared at his plate. "It's not what he thinks." "That's not an answer," Dad shot back. Daniel finally looked up, his eyes flashing with anger. "Fine. Yeah, I went out. I had a few drinks. So what? Megan's been stressing me out. School's been stressing me out. And I needed a break." "A break?" Dad's voice thundered. "From your fiancé?" "By crawling into another woman's arms." Daniel didn't respond. His silence was deafening. For the first time, I saw it click for my parents. The perfect son wasn't perfect. The cracks in the golden boy's crown were finally showing, and there was no covering them up. Mom shook her head like she couldn't believe it. "This isn't you, Daniel. Tell me this isn't you." But it was. And as the reality settled in, I realized I'd lit a fire that wasn't going out anytime soon. The rest of Thanksgiving was a disaster. Megan didn't come back. The food went cold. The conversations were awkward, forced, and short. Daniel kept his head down, barely touching his plate. After everyone left, I expected Dad to tear into me for blowing things up. But instead, he called me into the den. I walked in cautiously, half prepared for another lecture. Dad sat in his armchair, his glass of whiskey half full on the table beside him. "Sit," he said. I did. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he sighed. "You could have handled that better." "I know," I admitted. "But," he rubbed his forehead, "you weren't wrong." I blinked, surprised. "What?" "You weren't wrong about your brother. I just wish you told me privately instead of blowing it up in front of everyone." I let out a humorless laugh. "Would you have believed me if I had?" Dad didn't answer. His silence was all the answer I needed. The fallout lasted weeks. Megan called off the engagement. Daniel tried to win her back, but she was done. Word spread through the family, and suddenly the golden boy wasn't so golden anymore. But here's the thing. Instead of finally being treated equally, I found myself in a different kind of spotlight. Now I was the one blamed for everything. Mom couldn't even look at me some days. "If you hadn't said anything," she'd mutter while doing dishes, "they might have worked it out," as if his cheating was my fault. Daniel hated me, wouldn't even be in the same room. When he did speak, it was venom. "You ruined my life." Dad stayed neutral, caught between defending me and keeping the peace. And me? I just kept wondering if I'd done the right thing. Because the truth is, even though Daniel was wrong, even though he betrayed Megan and lied to all of us, I couldn't shake the guilt. Was I the asshole for saying something? Or was I finally justified for not staying quiet this time? The family may never see it my way, but I'll tell you this. Sometimes exposing the truth doesn't bring freedom. Sometimes it just burns everything down with it. And once it's burned, nothing's the same again. If you like this story, drop a like and hit subscribe. It really keeps me going to bring more stories your way. You ever walk into a family gathering and instantly know something is wrong? Not the obvious kind, like someone crying or yelling, but the kind of tension that clings to the air like smoke after a fire. That's what I felt the second I stepped through my parents' front door for my sister's baby shower. The decorations were up, pink balloons taped to the walls, a banner that read "Welcome Baby Girl," and trays of finger food lined across the dining room table. Everything looked cheerful on the surface, but beneath it, there was this heaviness. Mom was fluttering around the kitchen, pretending like she didn't notice it. Dad sat in the recliner with his jaw clenched, watching sports like he was trying to block everything else out. And then there was my brother-in-law, Nate. He was pacing the living room, phone in hand, whispering into it like the world was going to end if someone overheard him. My sister, Emily, was 7 months pregnant. She was supposed to be glowing, smiling, soaking up the attention of being the guest of honor. Instead, she sat stiff on the couch, her hands folded over her belly, staring at Nate like she could burn a hole through him with her eyes. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I dropped the gift bag on the table and went straight to her. What's going on? She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Nothing. Just tired. Bullshit. I muttered under my breath. Tell me. She shook her head, glancing at Mom, who was pretending to refill the chip bowl. Not now. But Nate, he didn't even try to hide his irritation. He snapped his phone shut, shoved it in his pocket, and muttered, "Can we not do this today? It's supposed to be about the baby." I raised an eyebrow. Funny, because it feels like it's about whatever shady phone call you just had. His head whipped toward me, eyes narrowing. Stay out of it. Or what? I shot back. Emily let out a shaky breath. Stop, both of you. But her voice cracked. That tiny break told me everything. This wasn't just a random fight. This was something bigger. And as much as she wanted me to stay out of it, I couldn't. Because Emily was my baby sister, and whatever storm was brewing, she was right in the middle of it. The shower went on like nothing was wrong, at least on the surface. People laughed, played the silly baby-themed games, ate cake, and took pictures with Emily. But under it all, the tension never went away. I caught Nate slipping outside twice to make more calls. Every time he came back in, Emily's face would harden just a little more. Finally, when most of the guests had left and only close family remained, Emily excused herself upstairs. I followed. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor. "Okay," I said gently. "It's just us now. What's going on?" Her eyes filled with tears. She bit her lip, trying to hold them back, but then she broke. "It's Nate," she whispered. "I think he's cheating on me." The words hit me like a punch. "What?" She wiped her face with her sleeve. "He's been weird for months. Late nights, secretive phone calls, lying about where he is. At first, I thought maybe I was overthinking it, that it was just stress. But then I found messages." "What kind of messages?" Her voice trembled. "Flirty ones. From some woman." I confronted him, and he swore it was nothing, just a friend. But today, when he kept sneaking off to call someone, I just know it's her. I clenched my fists. "Why the hell are you keeping this quiet? He's humiliating you in front of everyone." "Because I don't know what to do," she cried. "I'm 7 months pregnant. I can't just leave him right now. And if I tell Mom and Dad, it'll destroy everything." I sat beside her, my chest tight. You don't deserve this. Pregnant or not, you shouldn't have to put up with him sneaking around." She shook her head, tears streaming. "I don't even care about me. I care about the baby. If he's already out there with someone else, how am I supposed to trust him to be a father?" For once, I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the golden image of Nate, the devoted husband, the soon-to-be dad, was shattered. And the worst part? He was downstairs right now, probably planning his next excuse. I looked at Emily. "Do you want me to handle this?" Her eyes widened. "No. Please don't make it worse." But I'd already made up my mind. This wasn't going to slide. Because no matter how much Emily begged me to leave it alone, I couldn't sit back and watch her be broken by a man who clearly didn't value her or the child she was carrying. And if Nate thought he could keep his little secret buried, he had no idea who he was dealing with. Because I was done playing nice. I didn't sleep that night. After the baby shower, I went home, sat on my couch, and replayed every single moment from the day in my head. Emily's tears, Nate's shady phone calls, Mom's denial, Dad's silence. It all boiled inside me until I finally realized something. If Emily wasn't going to confront him, I had to. The next morning, I drove straight back to my parents' house. Nate's car was still in the driveway. He opened the door when I knocked, looking like he hadn't slept either. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hair stuck up like he'd been running his hands through it all night. "What do you want?" he muttered. I pushed past him into the living room. "Cut the crap, Nate. I know you're cheating on Emily." He froze. His jaw clenched, and for a second, I thought he was going to deny it. But then he laughed. A low, bitter laugh that made my stomach turn. "You don't know anything," he said. "You're right. I don't know the details, but I know enough. The phone calls, the lies, the messages Emily found. Don't insult me by pretending it's nothing." His smile vanished. He dropped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, he looked less like the smug husband and more like a man caught in a trap of his own making. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered. "What wasn't?" I demanded. He looked up at me, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Her name's Tessa. We met at work. Started as just talking, then drinks after hours. I don't even know how it got this far." My chest burned. "Emily's carrying your child, Nate. She's been bending over backwards to support you, and you're out there screwing around with some coworker." He winced. "I never wanted to hurt her." "Then why did you?" I snapped. He didn't answer, just stared at the floor like it might swallow him whole. I wanted to hit him, wanted to drag him upstairs and force him to look Emily in the eye and admit everything. But I didn't, because Emily had begged me not to make it worse. So instead I said, "You have one chance to fix this. Tell her. Today. If you don't, I will." He looked terrified. "You can't. Watch me." I cut in. "You don't deserve her, Nate. But she at least deserves the truth." When Emily finally came downstairs, she looked exhausted. She must have heard us because she didn't even ask what was going on. She just looked between us and whispered, "So it's true." Her voice broke. Nate's face crumpled. "Aim, please." "Don't," she snapped, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "I don't want your excuses." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and for the first time, Nate didn't try to deny it. He just sat there, shoulders hunched, like a man who'd lost everything. Mom walked in then, holding a basket of laundry. She froze when she saw Emily crying. "What's going on?" Emily turned toward her, voice trembling. "Nate's been cheating on me." The basket slipped from Mom's hands. Clothes spilled across the floor, but she didn't move to pick them up. Her face went pale. "No. No, that can't be true." "It is," I said quietly. Dad entered from the kitchen, his eyes narrowing. "What's going on?" "Ask your son-in-law," I spat. Nate stood slowly, like he was bracing for impact. "It's true. I messed up." The room erupted. Mom burst into tears. Dad's face turned red with rage, and Emily sank onto the couch like the weight of it all was crushing her. "You bastard," Dad growled, taking a step forward. "You betray my daughter, my grandchild, and stand in my house admitting it?"
"I'm sorry," Nate whispered.
"I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" Dad roared. "You think that excuses you? You think sorry fixes this?" I thought Dad was going to hit him. For a moment, I almost wished he would. But instead, he turned away, fists shaking. "Get out," he said coldly. Nate's eyes widened. "What?" "You heard me. Get out of my house. You don't deserve to stand here after what you've done." Nate looked at Emily, desperate. "Aim, please. Don't do this. We can work through it." But she shook her head. "No, we can't. I won't raise my daughter with a man I can't trust." Her voice cracked, but there was steel underneath it, stronger than I'd ever heard her. And just like that, it was over. The weeks that followed were brutal. Nate tried everything. Apologies, gifts, promises that he'd change, but Emily never budged. She moved back into our parents' house, and when the baby was born, Nate was only allowed supervised visits. Mom struggled the most. She wanted to pretend it hadn't happened, wanted to keep the image of the perfect family alive. But every time she saw Emily holding the baby alone, the truth hit her again. Dad didn't speak to Nate at all. To this day, I don't think he's forgiven him. And me? I carried the weight of knowing I'd been right, but it didn't feel like victory. Watching my sister cry herself to sleep, watching her raise her daughter without the man she thought she'd spend her life with. It hurt, but it also showed me something. Emily was stronger than I ever gave her credit for. She didn't crumble. She didn't let Nate's betrayal define her. She poured everything into her daughter, into being the mother she knew her child deserved. And maybe that's the silver lining, because as broken as things got, as messy and painful as it was, Emily came out the other side tougher, braver, and more determined than ever. And Nate? Well, Nate's just a reminder that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who shatter us. But if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family can survive even the deepest cracks, as long as you're willing to face the truth, no matter how ugly it is. If this story hit you, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me keep sharing more real stories like this one. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my mom move back in with me after everything she put me through? I grew up in a small town where everybody seemed to know everybody else's business. My mom, let's just say, she wasn't the easiest person to live with. She was always kind of the center of drama, and unfortunately, I was dragged into it more than I ever wanted. My dad left when I was 7, and it was mostly because of her. She was controlling, manipulative, and constantly accusing him of cheating, even though he never did. After the divorce, she turned all of her bitterness on me. I was the kid who got grounded for rolling my eyes. I was the kid who got yelled at for asking for a new pair of shoes, even if mine had holes in them. She loved to control me, and everything in her house had to be done her way. I couldn't breathe without her finding a way to criticize me. As I got older, I thought maybe things would get better. Spoiler, they didn't. When I got into high school, I started working part-time just to save money for myself. My mom didn't like that because it meant I had a little independence. She demanded that I give her half of everything I earned because I was living under her roof. If I didn't, she'd threaten to kick me out. It wasn't just money, though. She used guilt like it was a weapon. She'd tell me that I owed her for giving birth to me, that without her, I wouldn't exist, so the least I could do was hand over my paycheck. And when she wasn't playing the guilt card, she was tearing me down emotionally, calling me ungrateful, selfish, and even stupid if I didn't agree with her about something. The day I turned 18, I knew I needed to leave. I applied to a college out of state and got in. When I told her I was leaving, she had a meltdown. She accused me of abandoning her and said I was just like my dad. She told me I'd fail without her, that I'd come crawling back. But I left anyway. College wasn't easy. I had no real financial support from her, and she refused to fill out any paperwork that would have qualified me for financial aid. She told me if I wanted to play adult, then I could figure it out myself. So I worked 3 jobs while studying full-time. I barely slept, but I survived. And for the first time in my life, I started to feel free. Fast forward a few years, I built a decent life for myself. I have a stable job, a small house I bought on my own, and friends who feel more like family than my actual family. My mom and I barely talked during that time, except for the occasional phone call where she'd remind me that she sacrificed everything for me and I owed her. I keep the calls short and polite, but never engaged too much. Then, a few months ago, I got a call that she was being evicted from her apartment. She'd apparently not been paying rent for months, spent all her money shopping online and going out, and had no savings. She called me sobbing, saying she had nowhere to go. She begged me to let her stay with me. Here's where the asshole question comes in. I told her no. At first, I felt bad for saying it. But then I remembered all the nights she screamed at me for no reason, all the times she made me feel worthless, all the years she took my money and told me I wasn't good enough. I told her she needed to figure it out, that I wasn't her safety net. She lost it. She screamed at me that I was heartless, that I'd let my own mother end up on the streets. She said I was selfish and that no matter what she did in the past, she was still my mom. Since then, the guilt trips haven't stopped. She's called me every name in the book. She even told relatives that I'm abandoning her, and now they're all calling me, too. saying I should let her move in, at least temporarily. But I know how my mom is. If she moves in, she'll never leave. And my home is my safe place. It's the one thing I built for myself without her control. I can't imagine having her here, criticizing everything I do, making me feel small again. Still, part of me feels guilty. She is my mom, and she really doesn't have anywhere else to go. But another part of me knows that if I let her in, I'll be miserable. I'll lose the peace I fought so hard to find. So, am I the asshole for refusing to let her move in with me after everything she put me through? After I told my mom no, I expected the fallout, but I didn't realize just how far she'd go to make me feel like a monster. Within days, my phone was blowing up with texts and calls from cousins, aunts, and even people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some of them were guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "She's your mother. You wouldn't even exist without her. The least you could do is give her a roof over her head." Others were harsher, straight up calling me selfish and cruel. At first, I didn't answer. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would blow over. But the messages kept coming. One of my aunts even left a voicemail saying, "If your mom ends up homeless, it'll be on your conscience forever. People will never look at you the same." That one really got under my skin. I spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. The little kid in me, the one who always craved approval, who always wanted to make my mom proud, kept whispering, "Maybe you're being too harsh. Maybe you should just let her stay for a little while." But the adult in me, the one who had lived through all the manipulation and emotional abuse, was louder. That voice said, "Don't you dare undo all the progress you've made. Don't hand her the keys to your peace just because she's pressuring you." I didn't realize how strong her manipulation was until it started affecting my work. I'd be in the middle of meetings, and my phone would buzz with yet another message. "How can you call yourself a good person when your own mother is suffering?" I'd feel my chest tighten, my focus slip. I even snapped at a coworker one day, which is something I never do. Eventually, I caved a little. I told her I'd help pay for a motel for a couple of weeks while she figured things out. It wasn't ideal for me financially, but I thought it was a fair compromise. When I told her, instead of being grateful, she scoffed and said, "A motel? Like I'm some kind of stray animal? You're unbelievable." That's when it hit me again. Nothing I did would ever be enough for her. If I gave her the motel, she'd complain it wasn't a house. If I gave her the house, she'd complain it wasn't big enough. That cycle never ends with her. A few days later, she actually showed up at my doorstep. No warning, no call, just a knock at the door. When I opened it, she had 2 garbage bags of clothes with her and said, "I knew you'd come to your senses." My stomach dropped. I told her she couldn't stay. I reminded her I'd offered the motel option, but she ignored me and tried to push past me into the house. I had to physically block the door with my body, my hands shaking as I told her to leave. She exploded, yelling, calling me ungrateful, telling me I was heartless. My neighbors peeked out their windows. It was humiliating. After about 10 minutes of her screaming, she finally left, muttering that I'd regret this when she was dead in a ditch. That night, I broke down. I sat in my living room, lights off, crying into my hands. Part of me hated myself for standing my ground. Another part of me felt an overwhelming sense of relief, like I had finally drawn a line in the sand that couldn't be erased. The next week, I got another wave of calls from relatives, this time angrier. Apparently, my mom had spun a story that I had slammed the door in her face while she begged for mercy. One cousin even messaged me, "I don't know how you sleep at night." For the first time, though, I didn't crumble. I texted back, "You're welcome to take her in if you feel that strongly." Funny enough, none of them responded after that. Not a single one offered to house her. It was easier for them to shame me than to step up themselves. Weeks have passed since then, and while the guilt hasn't fully disappeared, I've noticed something. My home feels like my sanctuary again. I wake up in the morning, sip coffee on my porch, and breathe in the quiet. There's no tension in the air, no weight pressing down on me. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells anymore. And here's the thing, I realized that being someone's child doesn't mean you're obligated to let them ruin your life. Being related by blood doesn't erase years of pain or entitle them to your peace. I've learned that protecting myself isn't cruel. It's survival. My mom still tries. Every so often, she'll send a dramatic text or a voicemail dripping with guilt. I keep my responses short or don't reply at all. I've set boundaries, and this time, I'm not backing down. I don't know what's going to happen to her, but I do know this. I'm not the villain she paints me to be. I'm just someone who refuses to keep bleeding for a person who never once tried to stop the bleeding they caused. And if that makes me an asshole in some people's eyes, so be it. If you want more real stories like this, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It helps keep these coming. You ever have one of those moments where your entire family looks at you like you've grown 3 heads? That was me last Thanksgiving. I swear, if I had just kept my mouth shut, maybe things wouldn't have blown up the way they did. But honestly, keeping quiet would have eaten me alive. Started a few weeks before the holiday. My younger brother, Jason, had been bragging in the family group chat about how he and his girlfriend were moving into a new place together. Everyone was gushing over them. My mom kept sending heart emojis. My aunt said, "Oh, they're such a perfect couple." And my dad even offered to help them with the down payment. Meanwhile, I was sitting there reading these messages, gritting my teeth, because I knew something they didn't. Jason had been cheating on his girlfriend for months. I didn't find out because I was snooping or anything. He straight up told me. One night after a few beers, he admitted he'd been hooking up with a coworker just for fun. He laughed about it like it was some kind of inside joke. I remember staring at him, stunned, while he went on about how his girlfriend would never find out because she was too naive. I wanted to shake him. His girlfriend, Melissa, wasn't just some random girl. She'd been part of our family for years. She came to birthdays, helped my mom cook at Christmas, even sat with me for hours when I was going through a rough breakup. She was the kind of person who remembered your favorite snack and picked it up at the store just because. Melissa was family to me, maybe more so than my own brother at times. And Jason, he didn't care. So when Thanksgiving rolled around, and Melissa was sitting at our dining table passing out mashed potatoes with that warm smile of hers, I felt sick. Jason was sitting right next to her, arm draped over her chair like he was the picture of a devoted boyfriend. That's when the anger in me bubbled over. I couldn't sit through another holiday pretending everything was fine. Started small. Jason made some dumb joke about how Melissa burns toast like it's a sport. And everyone laughed, but I couldn't force myself to laugh along. I said, "At least she's not sneaking around behind your back." The room went dead silent. You could have heard the gravy boat clink. Jason shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Melissa froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. My mom immediately went into damage control mode, saying, "What on earth are you talking about?" My heart was pounding, but I didn't stop. I'm talking about how Jason's been cheating on Melissa for months, with a coworker. Melissa's hand dropped. The fork hit her plate with a clang. My dad muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. Jason, he tried to laugh it off. He's joking. You know how he is, always trying to stir up drama. But I wasn't joking, and Melissa could see it written all over my face. "Are you serious?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Jason's grin faltered. He stammered something about me being drunk. I hadn't had a drop of alcohol. And that's when Melissa pushed back her chair and stood up. Tears filled her eyes as she looked around the table, searching everyone's faces for some kind of confirmation. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice breaking. Nobody said a word. Not my mom, not my dad, not even my cousins. The silence was deafening. I finally said it. "Yes, it's true. He told me himself." Jason jumped up, knocking his chair over. "Why would you say that? You're trying to ruin my life," he yelled. Melissa let out this choked sound, half gasp, half sob, and ran out of the room. Jason went after her, but not before shoving me hard in the shoulder. Dinner was basically over after that. My mom scolded me for airing dirty laundry in front of everyone. My dad looked furious but didn't direct it at anyone specifically, and the cousins just whispered amongst themselves. I sat there staring at my cold plate of turkey, wondering if I had just destroyed Thanksgiving forever. Later that night, Melissa texted me. She thanked me for telling her the truth, even though it hurt. She said she confronted Jason, and he admitted everything. She packed a bag and went to stay with her sister. Jason, on the other hand, blew up my phone with angry messages. He called me a traitor, said I'd ruined his relationship out of jealousy, and that I'd never be forgiven. My mom even called me the next morning, saying I should have just kept quiet because these things work themselves out. But do they? Do cheaters suddenly wake up and decide to change without being confronted? Do lies somehow magically dissolve if everyone just ignores them? The fallout has been brutal. Jason blocked me on everything. My mom is still mad at me. Half the family thinks I went too far. But Melissa, she's free from a relationship built on lies. And that has to count for something. The worst part? Deep down, I know Jason's only angry because he got caught, not because he did anything wrong. And my mom? She cares more about keeping up appearances than whether Melissa was being disrespected. And me? I'm stuck wondering if I did the right thing, or if I really am the asshole they all say I am. The days after Thanksgiving were some of the most uncomfortable I've ever experienced in my life. Walking into family gatherings felt like stepping into a war zone. Jason refused to make eye contact, and every time he did, it was like he was daring me to say another word. My mom still kept giving me that disappointed glare, like somehow I'd become the villain overnight. Melissa stayed with her sister for a week. She was still upset, obviously, but she also texted me almost every day. She wanted updates about Jason, about how the family was reacting, and whether she could trust anyone. It was weird. Melissa and I had never been super close before, but after that Thanksgiving, we were bonded by a shared experience of betrayal. Meanwhile, Jason went on a full-on campaign to turn the rest of the family against me. He told them I was exaggerating, that I was jealous of his relationship, and that I was looking for attention. Surprisingly, some people bought it. My aunt said I had a flair for drama, and even my dad shook his head at me, muttering, "You should have handled it differently." Couldn't believe it. Handling it differently? How else was I supposed to handle it? By sitting there and letting him ruin someone's life. Then came the most shocking part. Jason's coworker, let's call her Emily, suddenly messaged me. She'd seen everything fall apart and wanted to clear the air. I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to get tangled in Jason's lies any further. But Emily's message surprised me. She didn't deny anything. She said she wasn't proud of what happened, that Jason had made promises he never intended to keep, and that she hoped Melissa would find out because it was the right thing. Reading her words, I felt this odd mix of vindication and disgust. It was like having a stranger validate your anger, but also remind you of how messy people can be. Melissa eventually came back for a short visit, just to grab some belongings from Jason's apartment. I offered to go with her, mostly to support her, but also because I wanted to make sure he didn't pull any manipulation. When we got there, Jason tried to act like nothing had happened. He smiled, he joked, but Melissa didn't respond to him at all, not even a glance. Watching him squirm was oddly satisfying. I know it sounds petty, but after weeks of him acting untouchable, seeing the guilt in his eyes felt like justice. Melissa thanked me again, but this time she added something I didn't expect. "I think I can forgive you for how you handled it," she said with a small laugh. Because honestly, I don't think I could have faced this truth alone. Her words hit me harder than I thought. I didn't do it for thanks or praise, but hearing her say it felt like closure for both of us. She wasn't just free from Jason. She had a chance to rebuild her life without someone lying to her every day. Family gatherings remained tense for months. Thanksgiving the next year, Jason barely spoke, and the rest of the family kept conversations extremely superficial. But I noticed small shifts too. Melissa's sister invited me over for dinner a few times. My cousins texted me to hang out, and I realized that I wasn't completely cut off. There were people who saw the situation for what it was, and in some small way, that mattered more than anyone's anger. Jason eventually moved in with Emily, and I won't lie, part of me felt sorry for him. He thought he could manipulate everyone, and instead, he ended up with someone who only cared about casual fun. But I also knew he had it coming. He had no idea how much trust he had destroyed. My relationship with my parents didn't fully recover, but it's improved over time. We don't talk about that Thanksgiving, and honestly, I'm okay with that. It's one of those things that doesn't need to be discussed to be understood. Melissa and I still keep in touch. Not every day, but enough that when she has a rough moment, I can remind her that she doesn't have to deal with people like Jason. And when I'm having a rough moment, she reminds me that doing the right thing, even when it's uncomfortable, is worth it. I've learned a few things from all of this. Family loyalty doesn't always mean covering up lies. Sometimes it means stepping in, even if it makes you the target of anger. And honesty, even when it hurts, creates a path forward instead of keeping everyone stuck in deceit. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't scared of what would happen after I told Melissa the truth. But now, months later, I can say I don't regret a single word. Even if it cost me family peace temporarily, it gave someone else freedom. And for me, that was worth every awkward glance, every angry message, every criticism. Because in the end, I realized one truth. Protecting someone from lies is more important than protecting your own comfort. And if standing up for what's right makes me the asshole in my family's eyes, I'll take that. At least I can look at myself in the mirror knowing I didn't let someone I cared about get hurt while pretending everything was fine. If you've ever had to stand up for someone and it felt impossible, hit like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep sharing these real, messy stories that make you think. Sometimes you think you know your family inside and out, and then one moment comes along that flips your entire perspective. For me, that moment happened when I found out my dad was hiding something from all of us, and the fallout nearly ripped my family apart. It started with something small. My mom had been complaining for weeks that money seemed to be disappearing from their joint account. At first, she chalked it up to bills being higher or maybe a couple of online purchases she'd forgotten about. But then she showed me the bank statements. Over a span of 3 months, more than $6,000 had been withdrawn in cash. That might not sound like a huge deal for some people, but my parents are middle-class folks who budget carefully. My dad works as a mechanic, my mom's a school secretary. $6,000 is no small dent in their finances. I asked her if she talked to Dad about it, and she sighed. He says it's nothing, just things he had to cover, but he won't explain. Every time I press him, he gets defensive. That was weird to me. My dad isn't the defensive type. He's usually calm, practical, the kind of guy who fixes things quietly and doesn't make a fuss. So hearing he was snapping at Mom, that didn't sit right. The next week, I went over to their place for dinner. Things felt off. Mom was quiet, and Dad was cracking jokes louder than usual, almost like he was trying to fill the silence. When he got up to grab a beer, Mom gave me this look across the table. Eyebrows raised, lips tight. It was the look that said, "See? Something's wrong." Later, when Dad went outside to the garage, I followed him. He was leaning against his workbench, scrolling through his phone. I asked him directly, "Hey, Dad, what's going on with the money?" He froze, didn't look at me, didn't speak right away. Then he muttered, "It's nothing you need to worry about." Except I was worried. My mom was practically losing sleep over this, and now he was brushing me off. I pushed a little more, and that's when he snapped, "Drop it, okay? Just drop it." That might have been the end of it, except a few days later, Mom called me crying. She'd overheard Dad on the phone with someone, and what she caught made her stomach drop. He said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you." She doesn't know a thing. She, as in my mom. Now, I know what you're thinking. The obvious assumption is that Dad was having an affair. That's exactly where my mom's mind went, too. She was devastated. I tried to calm her down, told her maybe it was something else. Maybe we were jumping to conclusions, but even I couldn't shake that gut feeling. I decided to do something I'd never done before. Snoop. I know it's not great, but I had to know. When I visited again, I managed to check his glove compartment while he was inside. Inside was an envelope with receipts, money transfers, hotel bookings, dinners at restaurants I knew he'd never taken Mom to. My chest felt like it was going to explode. I didn't want to believe it, but all the signs pointed to Dad living some double life. That night, I confronted him. I put the envelope on the table and said, You want to tell me what this is? He went pale. For a second, he looked like a kid caught stealing candy. Then he sat down heavily and rubbed his face. It's not what you think, he said. I snapped back. Then tell me. Because right now it looks exactly like what I think. After a long pause, he admitted it. He'd been giving money to another woman. My stomach dropped. I could barely breathe. So, you're cheating on Mom? No, he said quickly. Not like that. It's complicated. Complicated. That was the word cheaters always used in the movies, wasn't it? I demanded he explain. He told me the woman's name, Laura. She wasn't some random fling. According to him, she was someone from his past. He claimed she had fallen on hard times, and he was just helping her out. Helping her out with thousands of dollars? Secret hotel rooms? Dinners? Yeah, sure. When I pressed him on the hotel receipts, his excuse was that he'd been meeting her to talk privately because she was embarrassed. Sounded so flimsy, I almost laughed. But here's the thing, when I looked at his face, he didn't look like a man caught in a lie. He looked broken, tired, like he was carrying the weight of the world. I didn't know what to believe. I told him he needed to come clean to Mom, but he shook his head violently. You don't understand. If she finds out, it'll destroy her. Just let me handle this. I left that night feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Do I protect my mom from the truth, or do I blow up her marriage by exposing my dad? I didn't have an answer. For the next week, I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be Mom calling to say she'd caught him in the act. Every time I saw Dad's name, I wanted to scream. I was stuck in this awful middle ground, carrying a secret I didn't even fully understand. And the worst part? I couldn't shake the question. What if Dad wasn't lying? What if Laura really was someone he was helping? Was it possible this whole situation wasn't as sinister as it looked? Or was I just desperate to believe my dad wasn't the kind of man who would betray his family like that? The weight of it kept building, and I knew eventually something was going to break. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. One Friday evening, Mom called me again. Her voice was shaky, the kind of shaky that comes when you're holding back a flood of emotions. She said, "He's leaving again. Said he has to go help a friend." I don't believe a word anymore. I followed him last time, but I lost him in traffic. I can't do this, I can't keep wondering. That was it for me. I told her I'd handle it. She begged me not to make a scene, but my patience was already gone. I drove over to my parents' house and waited. Sure enough, Dad got into his truck and drove off around 8 p.m. I followed him. He drove across town, down streets I didn't recognize, until he finally pulled into a small motel parking lot. Not a chain, not a nice one of those places you rent by the night or even by the hour. My stomach churned. I parked a few cars back and watched as he got out. And then I saw her. A woman walked up to him. Blonde, mid-40s, dressed simply in jeans and a hoodie. She hugged him. Not a casual hug. A long one. He put his hand on her back like he'd done it 1,000 times. That was it. I couldn't sit in my car anymore. I got out and walked straight toward them. My dad turned, eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. "Dad, what the hell is this?" I demanded. The woman looked startled, glanced at my dad, then back at me. "Who are you?" she asked cautiously. "I'm his son," I snapped. "Now, someone explain what's going on." My dad groaned and rubbed his face. "Not here. Please just get in the truck. Both of you." Against my better judgment, I did. The woman sat in the back, quiet, while Dad drove us to a diner. We sat in a booth, and that's when the truth finally came out. Her name was Laura, but she wasn't just some woman from his past. She was his daughter. My jaw literally dropped. "What?" He explained that before he met my mom, he'd had a serious relationship. It ended badly, and he never knew Laura's mother was pregnant. Years later, Laura tracked him down. At first, he didn't believe her, but a DNA test proved it. She was his biological daughter. I didn't even know what to say. He admitted he'd been seeing her secretly for months, trying to get to know her, helping her financially because she was going through a rough divorce and had kids to take care of. That was where the money had gone. the hotel receipts, meeting places where they could talk without raising suspicion. The dinners? Just attempts at bonding. I should have told you and your mom, he said quietly. But how do you drop a bomb like this after 30 years of marriage? She would feel betrayed. I didn't know how to explain without destroying everything. I sat there stunned, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to believe him because God, it made sense. The look on Laura's face wasn't flirty or romantic. It was hopeful. She looked at my dad the way someone looks at a parent they've always wished they had. But another part of me felt sick. This secret wasn't just his to carry anymore. My mom was at home, crying her eyes out, thinking he was cheating, while the truth was sitting here in a diner booth with us. I asked Laura, "Why didn't you just come forward? Why all the secrecy?" She hesitated before answering. "Because I didn't want to ruin your family. I just wanted to know him. I didn't want to be the reason your mom lost her marriage." Hearing that hurt. It wasn't malicious. It was just tragic. Still, I couldn't excuse the way my dad had handled it. He let my mom spiral into paranoia and heartbreak instead of facing the truth. And now I was stuck in the middle, knowing something she didn't. When we finally left, I told Dad point blank, "You need to tell Mom. Tonight. If you don't, I will." He begged me to give him time. "Just a little longer, please. Let me figure out how to do this right." I shook my head. "You've had months. Time's up." I went back to Mom's that night. She was sitting on the couch, eyes puffy, tissues everywhere. When she asked where I'd been, I froze. My throat tightened. For the first time in my life, I lied to her face. I said I hadn't followed Dad, that I didn't know anything. Because the truth, I wasn't ready to destroy her world. Not yet. The guilt ate at me. Every phone call from her was another knife in my chest. She'd whisper, "Do you think he's really cheating?" And all I could say was, "I don't know, Mom. I just don't know." I couldn't keep it in forever. A week later, I cracked. I told her everything. The money, the hotel receipts, the woman, the secret daughter. She went silent. Completely silent. I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard her sob. Not the kind of sobbing where you cry into your hands. The kind where your whole body collapses under the weight of it. She wasn't angry. Not at first. Just broken. Later, though, the anger came. She confronted Dad. He tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She screamed that he'd betrayed her, that he'd lied every single day for months. She said it didn't matter if it was another woman or a hidden child. It was still betrayal. For days, they barely spoke. The house was filled with silence and tension so heavy you could choke on it. I didn't know if they'd survive it. Honestly, I wasn't sure they should. As for me, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me empathized with Dad. How do you tell your wife of 30 years you have a secret daughter? But another part of me hated him for the damage he caused by staying silent. And Laura? I wasn't sure where she fit into all this. She wasn't my enemy, but she also wasn't family yet. I couldn't just flip a switch and accept her. The worst part? The question gnawed at me every night. Was I the asshole for telling Mom the truth? Should I have let Dad handle it on his own timeline, even if that meant more secrets, more suspicion? Or was I right to expose everything, no matter how much it hurt? Because now, the family I grew up with might never be the same again. If you want to know how this all ends, make sure you like this video and subscribe right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next chapter. I never thought I'd be the guy standing in his kitchen holding a stack of bank statements and feeling like the ground had been pulled out from under him. But that's where I was just a couple weeks ago. Started small. My wife, Melissa, had been working later than usual. At first, I didn't think much of it. She's in marketing and deadlines can be brutal. I'd text her. She'd reply hours later with "sorry, crazy day," followed by a heart emoji. That was normal, right? Except then she started coming home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. Melissa doesn't usually wear much fragrance, but I'd catch a whiff of something floral, sharp, clinging to her clothes. When I asked, she brushed it off. "Oh, one of the girls at the office sprayed me as a joke." It didn't sit right. Then there were the receipts. First, a dinner for two at an Italian restaurant we'd never been to. She said it was a work thing. Then, a hotel bar tab, wine and whiskey. Melissa doesn't drink whiskey. When I asked, she snapped, "Do you not trust me?" That question cut me deeper than I expected, because the honest answer was, I wasn't sure anymore. So I started looking closer. One night, while she showered, I checked her purse. Inside was a second phone. My stomach dropped. I didn't even open it. I didn't need to. What other explanation could there be? That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I acted normal, but inside I was a storm. I spent the week watching her more carefully. She smiled less at home, but she smiled a lot when her phone lit up. I caught her sneaking texts in the bathroom. She said it was work, but since when does work text you at midnight? Finally, I decided I needed answers. I confided in my best friend, Derek. He's the kind of guy who always tells you the truth, even if it stings. When I laid it out, he didn't sugarcoat it. Man, it sounds bad, but don't accuse her without proof. You need to be sure. He was right, so I waited. The proof came on a Thursday. Melissa said she was staying late to prepare a pitch, but I knew something was off. I drove to her office around 8:30 p.m. The building was dark. No cars in the lot, except hers, parked next to another car, a silver BMW. I parked across the street and waited. 10 minutes later, I saw her. She walked out, laughing, holding the arm of a man in a suit. Not just holding, it was intimate. She leaned into him the way she used to lean into me when we first started dating. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I followed them. They didn't go to dinner. They went to a hotel. I sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and watched them disappear inside. My chest burned, my vision blurred. Part of me wanted to storm in and scream. Part of me wanted to drive away and never look back. Instead, I stayed. I stayed until almost midnight, when I saw them come out, her hair a little messy, his hand on the small of her back. I thought I might throw up. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like nothing happened, like she hadn't destroyed me the night before. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. That evening, I confronted her. I laid the receipts, the hotel bar tab, and the memory of what I'd seen on the table. Her face drained of color. For a second, I thought she'd deny it, but she didn't. She just said, "I'm sorry." That was worse than denial. I demanded answers. Who was he? How long had it been going on? Did she love him? She confessed. His name was Ryan. He was a client. It had started 6 months ago. At first, it was just business dinners. Then it became something more. She said she didn't mean for it to happen. She said she still loved me, that I was her rock. But she'd gotten swept up in the excitement. Excitement. That word nearly killed me. I asked if she was going to leave me for him. She shook her head, crying, saying no, he didn't mean that much. It was just a phase. She begged me not to tell anyone, not to blow up our lives over a mistake. A mistake? 6 months isn't a mistake. 6 months is a choice. I told her to sleep in the guest room. She cried harder, saying we could fix it, that couples therapy could help. But I couldn't even look at her. The next few days were hell. She tried to act like everything was normal, cooking breakfast, asking about my day, but it all felt fake. I couldn't unsee her with him, couldn't unhear the word excitement. I finally told Derek. He said I needed to make a decision. Forgive her and work on it, or walk away. But either way, I couldn't stay in limbo. That's where I'm stuck. Part of me wants to pack her things and tell her it's over. But another part of me, the part that remembers our wedding, our late-night talks, the way she held me when my dad died, wants to believe she can change. That maybe I can forgive. But can I really? Can I look at her and not see Ryan? Can I ever trust her again? And here's the kicker. She's begging me not to tell her family. Her parents adore me. If they knew she cheated, it would break them. She says we can handle it privately. But should I? Or does her family deserve to know the kind of person she is? I don't even know if I'm the asshole anymore, for spying, for following her, for exposing the truth. All I know is that my marriage feels like it's already over, and I'm the only one who didn't get the memo. I don't think I've ever felt so torn in my life. The house we shared didn't feel like a home anymore. Every picture frame on the wall, every mug in the cupboard, every blanket draped across the couch. They all felt like lies. Melissa kept hovering. Every time I walked into a room, she'd try to start talking. "Can we sit down? Please? Just for 10 minutes." But the sound of her voice made me feel sick. I couldn't stand to look at her without remembering the way she leaned into Ryan. So I avoided her. I slept on the couch. I took my meals at odd hours. I buried myself in work just to stay out of the house. But it couldn't go on like that forever. One night, about a week after I'd confronted her, she cornered me in the kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, pale with bags under her eyes. She put her hands on the counter, her voice trembling. "I ended it," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "With Ryan," she continued. "It's over. I blocked him, deleted everything. I swear it's done." I didn't answer right away, because what do you say to that? Congratulations? Do you clap for someone who finally decided to stop betraying you? I finally muttered, "That doesn't erase what you did." She nodded quickly. I know, and I'm so sorry. I've been a terrible wife. I hurt you in ways I can't even imagine. But I want to fix this. Please, let's go to therapy. Let's rebuild. I'll do whatever it takes." I just stared at her. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part of me wanted to believe her. That was the worst part, wanting to believe. I didn't commit to anything. I told her I needed time. But time doesn't heal everything. Sometimes it just stretches the pain out longer. I finally made an appointment with a therapist. Not couples counseling, just me. I needed someone neutral, someone outside the mess, to help me figure out if staying was even possible. The therapist, Dr. Lee, listened patiently as I spilled everything. The receipts, the hotel, the confession, the begging. She didn't look shocked. I guess she'd heard it all before. When I finished, she said something that stuck with me. "You're grieving. Infidelity isn't just a betrayal, it's a death. The version of your marriage you thought you had no longer exists. Now you have to decide if you want to build something new from the ashes, or walk away. A death. That's exactly what it felt like. I left the session both lighter and heavier. Lighter because someone understood. Heavier because now I had to decide. Melissa kept trying. She'd leave little notes for me. "I love you. I'll fight for us." She'd cook my favorite meals, even when I barely touched them. She'd text me during the day thinking of you. "Please don't give up on me." But the damage was there. The breaking point came one night when I couldn't sleep. I wandered into the guest room where she'd been staying. She was asleep, her phone on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but my hands moved on their own. I picked it up. She'd deleted most of her messages, but one email was still open. It was from Ryan. "I know you said it's over, but I can't stop thinking about you. If you change your mind, you know where to find me." My chest tightened. She hadn't replied, but she hadn't deleted it either. I dropped the phone back on the nightstand and walked out. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I told her I saw the email. She swore up and down that she hadn't responded, that she was done with him, that she was trying to prove herself. Tears streamed down her face as she begged me to trust her. But trust isn't a light switch. You can't flip it back on once it's broken. I talked to Derek again. He told me straight, "You're holding on to a ghost. She might want to fix things, but you'll never see her the same way again. You'll always wonder. That's no way to live." He wasn't wrong. I sat in my car outside our house for over an hour, just staring at the front door, knowing what I had to do but terrified to do it. Finally, I walked inside. Melissa was at the table sipping coffee. She looked up and smiled hopefully. "Hey!" I sat down across from her. My hands shook, but my voice came out steady. "I can't do this anymore." Her face crumpled. "No, please, don't say that. We can work through this." "No," I interrupted. "We can't. I'll never trust you again. Every time you're late, every time you're on your phone, I'll wonder. That's not a marriage. That's torture." She reached across the table, but I pulled my hands back. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. She broke down sobbing, begging me to reconsider. But my mind was made up. That night, I packed a bag and left. I checked into a cheap motel just to get some distance. Lying there in the dark, I expected to feel crushed. But instead, I felt lighter, still hurt. God, did it hurt? But it was a clean hurt, not the festering wound of staying. A week later, papers were served. Melissa tried to fight it at first, but eventually she signed. We split everything down the middle. No kids, thank God, so it was easy as far as divorces go. Her parents called me, confused, begging me to explain. Melissa had told them some half-truth about us growing apart. I told them the real reason. They were devastated. Her dad actually apologized to me, like it was his fault somehow. I told him it wasn't, but it was hard to hear the disappointment in his voice when he talked about his daughter. Now I'm in a small apartment, half my stuff in boxes, half scattered around. It doesn't feel like home yet, but at least it feels like mine. Some nights, I lie awake replaying everything in my head. The laughter at the hotel, the receipts, the way she said, excitement. But other nights, I sleep like a baby for the first time in months. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone that deeply again. But I do know this. I'd rather be alone than with someone who made me feel worthless. And maybe that's not the ending I wanted, but it's the one I needed. If this story hit you, give it a like and subscribe. It pushes me to keep sharing more real stories with you.